Hi again, Panther fans, and welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. Once again, Dave Cohen, the radio voice of the Panthers, with you from our studios at Center Park Credit Union Stadium in downtown Atlanta. On this latest podcast, we're talking Georgia State football, spring football, with two of the new faces on head coach Dell McGee's coaching staff. Co-defensive coordinators Cam Clark, who joined the Panthers following 2 seasons up at Duke, and John Haneline, who arrived in Atlanta following 4 seasons at Youngstown State up in Ohio. Those two are tasked with rebuilding the Panthers' defensive unit, which allowed an average of 38 points a game back in 2025. Georgia State football tickets for the 2026 season available online at georgiastatesports.com or by calling the Athletics ticket office. That number is 404-413-4020. Right now, we welcome to the Panther Radio microphones, Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. For the first time, he's a newbie here at Georgia State on the staff, and that is Coach Cam Clark. Coach, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Atlanta. Welcome to Georgia State football.
Yeah, appreciate you. Appreciate you having me, and happy to be here.
Kind of hit the ground running. You come to Atlanta, all of a sudden you're out in the hot weather out here at the stadium, and spring practice is well underway right now.
No doubt. It's been fast and furious. You know, actually our first day on the job was back in January. That was the day the portal opened. So that was the first day I got here, and we have not stopped ever since.
So what do you do when you arrive at Georgia State? Like you said, had to find your office, hit the ground running, portals open. You got to put on that name tag that says, "Hi, my name is," and you got to start meeting all of these new guys. And, you know, now with the portal and with kids transferring in and out and the high school kids, that's kind of going to be an every season occurrence.
Yeah, no doubt. But, you know, the biggest thing is we had to assess the roster, what was left. I think, you know, our staff did a good job of filling us in because we had to learn, you know, on the fly. Kind of letting us know where we were at, what we had coming back, where our deficiencies were, and then it was just a matter of, all right, let's go see what's out there and find the best available.
So the previous 2 seasons up in Durham, North Carolina, on the staff there at Duke, what was your relationship prior, if at all, with head coach Dell McGee that brings you to Atlanta in the Georgia State program?
Yeah, Coach McGee and I actually worked together back in 2013 at Auburn. We were on the staff together there. So that was kind of my connection to Coach, and we have kept in touch over the years. And we had a lot of carryover, you know, even with the staff at Duke were some of those guys that were on staff with us. And actually Coach Damian Craig was on that staff as well.
Such a relationship business in your world in coaching, isn't it? I mean, it's one of those things where you know somebody and, you know, it may not come back to affect you for years down the line.
Oh, 100%. It is. It's all about relationships. And I think it's that way in anything. I mean, it's that way in the business world too. But, you know, I think it's all about trust, you know. And so you get to know these guys, and even though you hadn't worked with each other in over 10 years, you know, you build a trust factor, you know, when you work together because you've been through it together before. And, you know, you don't forget those things.
Accomplished a lot in 2 seasons up in Durham at Duke, didn't you? You were working with the quarterbacks, you know, listed as a senior analyst, and you know, they had a couple of pretty good seasons up there.
Yeah, that was a unique time for me. I mean, obviously I'm a defense coordinator, and I was working on offense, and that was really Manny Diaz's vision. He wanted a defensive coordinator in the offensive room, and he wanted a defensive coordinator coaching quarterbacks. Teaching the quarterbacks defense, and we were fortunate enough to have a couple good ones. A really good one in the last year, who was an awesome kid to work with, and won a lot of games. And really, it was probably more valuable for me getting to sit in on that other side, game planning against defenses, teaching quarterbacks how to attack and ID defenses, and so really made me figure out, you know, what's important, what's not important. Kind of changes your perspective on things.
When you arrive at Georgia State, aside from having to get to know everybody and kind of instill your system, you and Coach Haneline, your system, and really what you want to teach these new kids, what's one or two of the most pressing things on your to-do list when you wake up in the morning? And again, at this recording, we are in spring practice right now. So, you know, on your to-do list, what are some of a couple of 3 pressing items that you want to make sure get accomplished, you know, early and during spring practice?
Yeah, the biggest 3 things for us, it has nothing to do with schematics. It's all about effort. Effort, number one. We've got to get these guys playing at an elite effort. Number two is just urgency. The urgency to get better at everything that we do, every drill that we do, every rep that we take, every tutoring session that we go to, every time we step into the weight room, every time we step into the meeting room, the urgency to get better now. And the third thing is a little bit more football related, but it's to play with leverage. And leverage means a lot of things, but leverage is tackling, and tackling is leverage. And to me, you play with urgency, you play with effort, and you can play with leverage. That's good defense. It doesn't matter coverage-wise, blitz-wise, front-wise, what you do. Those three things, all great defenses do.
I mentioned in the open, we gave up a few points per game last year. I'm sure you heard me say that. And I'm sure you probably watched some film on Georgia State. You went back, especially when you started thinking about taking this job and then taking the job and coming to Atlanta. What are some things, if at all, kind of jumped out from a film standpoint about Georgia State defensively a year ago, and kind of how you want to transition that a little bit to your way of doing things with Coach Haneline and yourself?
Yeah, I think, when you turned on the tape, I saw a couple things. Number one, I didn't see a lack of talent. I do think there's talent here, and I think there's still talent remaining. The other thing is, being a defensive coordinator, a big part of playing good defense is you got to look at it, and me having an offensive background, what's the offense look like? Right? Can they help? Can they help the defense? Can they keep us off the field? Can they control the ball? And one of the big things for that, me being a quarterback guy too, is did we have a quarterback? And we had a returning quarterback who's a really good athlete. I think that is as big as anything about playing defense, is because it's complementary football. It can't be one side or the other. And I felt like the pieces were here, on both sides of the football.
Going back to my previous question about pressing items that need to be taken care of, and it just reminded me, because you're on the sideline or you're up in the booth on game day, finding and identifying those leaders on the defensive side of the football that almost become an extension of you and Coach Haneline and the defensive staff is at the utmost importance. And it may not develop in the first couple of weeks of spring practice. It may take throughout the summer until you get to fall.
Yeah, 100%. All great teams are player-driven. They're not coach-driven, and so we must find leaders. Yeah, we're still in that process, though. That takes time. That's not an immediate thing. And what comes with that, though, is in order to have leaders, we got to build trust in our locker room, trust amongst each other, and trust amongst from player to coach to player as well. And trust has to be formed first. All right. So then you can form leaders, because we're going to coach these guys really hard. And in order to coach them really hard, we've all got to be able to trust each other. And then that goes back to the three things we said. We got to play great defense. You got to have trust if you're going to play, with effort and urgency and leverage, especially in leverage and tackling. Like, you got to trust each other. All right, that you're going to be here so I can be there. And those are the things that we're still working on. And as those things develop, your leaders will begin to emerge more and more.
We're talking Georgia State spring football with one of the new faces on head coach Dell McGee's staff. That's co-defensive coordinator Cam Clark, 15 years of coaching experience, so he's a football lifer. A native of Calhoun, Georgia, just went through Calhoun recently. And you go back to your playing career, 4 years at Harding University, football and track and field. And talk a little bit about, your how you were drawn to football.
Well, I was born into it. I was the son of a high school football coach in the state of Georgia. That was my life. That affected where I lived. We moved about every 2 or 3 years of my life, everywhere around the state. So I grew up. My son's here today, and just like him, I was on the sideline every day. And so honestly, probably didn't know anything else. But this is what I loved. I come to love it, and wanted to play. I played at Calhoun. I was actually a high school quarterback, and went on to play at Harding University out in Arkansas, where I played safety.
Also competing in track and field, so a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah, that was kind of track and field was a passion of mine. I was fortunate enough to win the state championship here in the state of Georgia, and was able to do it for 4 years in college as well. So fun times.
As I said, a football lifer, and I normally would ask, so what drew you to coaching? I think you were drawn to coaching from very, very early, like you said, in your career. When you graduate and you've got to make that first step into coaching. How did that transpire for you? How did you know where you were going to end up?
Yeah, I really had no clue at the time. My vision was I was the son of a high school coach, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And so I was prepared to go take a high school job, and I got a call it was a connection through Harding University where I played. There was a guy there that was the head coach at Faulkner University, NAI school down in Montgomery, Alabama. And he gave me a call. I went and checked it out, and I started realizing quickly after playing in college, you know what, I think I'd rather be on the college side of things. And so I said, shoot, I'm going to give it a shot. And then it just kind of kept snowballing from there, and you kept climbing, and everything just kind of worked out.
So correct me if I'm wrong, you ended up as a GA at Auburn under Gus Malzahn, and then you jump forward to 2011, 2012. You're at Arkansas State, so you're familiar with another Sun Belt school. And Hugh Freeze and Coach Malzahn are there. They're really setting, at least for you, for that segment of your coaching career, they're kind of helping you to set the foundation of what has become your coaching career. Because, another question would be, well, what do you take from all the guys that you've worked with and worked under? Because you're going to take a piece of them everywhere you go.
Yeah, for sure. I'm extremely fortunate. Coach Freeze was the one that first gave me a chance in Division I football. And then I was able to stay when Coach Malzahn came. And really connected with Coach Malzahn and that staff, and I was fortunate enough that Coach Malzahn took me to Auburn. But I also got a chance to work for some unbelievable defense coordinators and some guys who weren't defense coordinators at the time that are some big-time names, that you hear of now. Dave Womack was the first one I was under, and he kind of really shaped. You can still see a lot of Dave Womack in what we do. And then John Thompson had came in the next year, and actually just talked to John this morning. He gave me a call. And then when I got to Auburn, Ellis Johnson was huge, and I learned more football from that man and that defensive staff with Charlie Harbison and Rodney Garner. It was just an unbelievable staff to be a part of. Got an opportunity to really get involved in that defense where I got to essentially go coach the nickels by myself and run my own room at a Division I level, and that was huge. That was huge for my growth, and I learned more from those guys than you can imagine.
The John Thompson that was on the first staff here at Georgia State University.
Correct. Actually, I'm pretty sure when he came to Arkansas State, he was from here. So yes, that John Thompson, who's now back in the area coaching high school football.
Sure is. Get a chance to see and talk to him every once in a while. So as I said, football lifer, you always keep on the side of the garage, I'm sure, the U-Haul, because you heading to the next place in 3, 4, 5 years. Anyway, not to go through every stop, but Lamar University for a couple years, Western Illinois for a season or two, and then back to the high school level at Thomas County Central here in the state of Georgia. So you kind of, you've seen it and experienced. As they say, you've walked the walk and you've talked the talk at every level.
No doubt. And actually, I left Auburn because I wanted to be a defense coordinator. So I went back to Faulkner University. Went back to small college so I could get some experience, which then set me up to do it at Lamar and then do it at Western Illinois. And those stops were crucial in my development and learning, being thrown into the fire at a really high level. And that's where I met a lot of these coaches that we have brought with us. That's, I met Troy Douglas when I was at Lamar, and he was our corners coach. And when he left Lamar, he ran our system when he went to Howard to be the defensive coordinator. And then I went on to Western Illinois where John Haneline was our D-line coach. And, John, after we split there, John went on to Youngstown where he eventually became the coordinator. And again, we're all running the same kind of system. So that was huge, for me too, getting those guys. And that's kind of the crossover. And then even our newest coach that we just hired like a week ago, Chaz Scales, was a player for me when I was at Arkansas State. He was a part of those 2 Sun Belt championships. So, connections. It goes back to connections like Coach McGee talks about, like you just mentioned, just that familiarity, but that trust amongst each other. But so that every one of those stops have been special to me. But then going down and coaching high school football for a little bit, which I always thought that's what I would do anyways. And that that time was amazing for me and my family. That area is where all my family's from. It was the first time in my life and my kids' life where they were able to be around family. But to be at a place like Thomas County where football is serious and they love it, and be a part of a small town. And not only that, a part of amazing coaching staff there. Really great coaches down there who are great friends, and we had excellent football players, and we lost one game in 2 years and won a state championship in 6A, so I'm very proud of that, just like I am anything else.
27-1, the final record in 2 seasons there. I guess the only difference, being a football guy, game night, you're so focused on what's going on in front of you, in between the lines. Really, the difference, say from high school, obviously, to college, to the pros, just the amount of people that are in the stands and how bright the lights are outside the lines.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, probably outside of when I've been at Power 4 schools, you don't feel a difference, as a coach because, I bet at Thomas County Central we average more fans than most FCS football programs in the country. But football's football. It doesn't matter what level. Like you said, I've coached at every one of them, and at the end of the day, it's still football. You got to block and tackle. Scheme is scheme, and no matter what the level of athlete it is, it's still football, and I still love it no matter where I'm at.
All right, last question. Co-defensive coordinators for Georgia State this year. You and Coach Haneline, how will that work? What will the coordination be with regards to having 2 guys in the position as opposed to 1?
Yeah, kind of the way it works. You can't have 2. You can't have 2 chiefs, right? I'm the defensive coordinator. I'll be the play caller. I really keep my hands in the back end because that's a little bit more my specialty. And what was huge for me is getting a guy with John Haneline's experience and the trust that we have. Where, heck, he coached D-line for me last stop we were together. He's an excellent linebackers coach as well. He's coaching the outside backer, which puts him in a blend of both of those. And he's a guy that I know and trust. He's ran this system, and he's a guy that's really my eyes and ears on that front end and really let him put his hand into that.
All right, well, Coach, as always, appreciate it. Great having you here at Georgia State. I guess Calhoun, Georgia is now known for Cam Clark and Buc-ee's, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, probably a little bit more for Buc-ee's.
All right, well, continued success. We'll look forward to keeping up with Georgia State football as we march our way towards that opening game come September.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your time.
All right, I want to thank the new defensive coordinator here at Georgia State. He's a Calhoun, Georgia native. That's Cam Clark, joining us here in the opening segment of our Panther Insider podcast driven by Ford. Again, assisting him on the defensive side of the football this year from Youngstown State will be John Haneline. We'll talk to him coming up after this timeout. And these words from Ford and Center Park Credit Union.
Wherever you go this fall, greatness starts in a Ford SUV. That's because Ford Escape, Explorer, and the spirited Bronco Sport SUVs have the power, cargo space, and smart tech you need for tailgating on game day, camping under the stars, fall festivals, romantic dinner dates, concerts, antiquing, pumpkin picking, weekend getaways, school plays. For great offers on these versatile SUVs, see your local Ford dealer today. Greatness starts here.
Center Park Credit Union, the official financial sponsor of GSU football, is proud to be a part of the Georgia State community and the Panther Athletics program. Center Park provides members convenient financial services. In addition to online banking, mobile banking, and 7 Metro Atlanta branches, Center Park members have access to 5,000 co-op shared branches and 75,000 surcharge-free ATMs nationwide. To find a location near you, visit online at centerpark.org/contact, and that's park with a C. Not a member? Join today at centerpark.org. At Center Park, we help our members flourish.
Ranked alongside MIT and Stanford as one of the most innovative institutions in the country, Georgia State University is leading change in higher education. Few institutions have come so far so fast. We've proven that students from all backgrounds can succeed at the same level. We're changing the way our students are learning, helping them graduate faster, and save millions on the pathway to their degrees. It's no wonder the Washington Post called us a hotbed of growth and innovation. Think you know Georgia State? Think again.
We're back on the Panther Insider podcast driven by Ford. We're talking Georgia State football this week. We've talked to Cam Clark, one of the defensive coordinators, and we have 2, and the other one is John Haneline, a native of Cleveland, Ohio. comes to Georgia State after 4 seasons at Youngstown State. Coach, welcome to the Panther Radio microphones, the podcast microphones, and welcome to Georgia State University. You guys have really had to hit the ground running, the way college football is these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm incredibly excited to be here, and we did. I was actually overseas when taking the job, doing a little family Christmas, and flew back and then was home for 2 days and flew down here January 2nd and hit the ground running with the portal and all those things going on. So it's been fun.
How did you know Georgia State was the place that was going to be your next stop?
Yeah, I learned, I got to work for some great coaches, and Coach Mullen, and especially Youngstown State most recently, being around Jim Tressel. And the biggest thing to me was chasing people. It's not a logo. It's nothing about that. Being around the right people, and Coach Clark being like a brother. We worked together years ago. Coach Douglas, who he stood on the table as a guy I didn't know but have gotten to know, love him. And then getting to talk to Coach McGee and listening to his vision and what he wanted, it fired me up. It got me excited, and I knew I was going to be with the right people to go chase this thing.
You as well as anybody or any coach on this staff knows how much the fraternity of coaches, it's a large circle, but in reality it's a small circle, because even again in the previous segment talking to Coach Clark, just the people that he knew in his circles, and now the people that you know in your circles, and you two knew one another, and here you are connecting yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it looks like a big thing from the outside, but really every year it gets smaller and smaller. The connections, the guys I know who are mentors to me down south that I got a little closer to moving back down here, but every year it does get smaller, and it's fun to get to know different guys that you didn't know through that brotherhood that Coach Clark connected me with Coach McGee, and getting to know Coach JT and Coach Craig and all these guys I hadn't been around. It's been fun.
Let's talk about you. Tell me about your background, where you're from, how you came to become a football coach, your love for the game of football, because you don't become a football lifer if you don't love it and eat it and sleep it and drink it. In every form of fashion, football is a part of your life from the time you wake up to the time your eyes close at night.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll try and keep it relatively short. It kind of started when I was young. I lost my dad on my 13th birthday, and I had 3 older brothers, and especially the defensive side of football. My brothers were, the youngest, get beat up a little bit, and they always told me I wasn't tough enough to play defense. I was playing quarterback and different things, and then went to play college football at Bowling Green and played there. When I got done, I had a bad foot injury. I was having success leading the country in tackles, and my career was kind of done from that foot injury. So a bunch of coaches had told me they wanted to coach. DJ Durkin, who was at Auburn, different guys who coached me. I had 6 different coaches in 5 years. So in that time, there was no portal, right? So I got to learn a lot of who I wanted to be, didn't want to be. And I saw the business side of the NFL and kind of walked away. Was away for 2-3 years. My godson was born, and it really reminded me I was kind of raised by coaches, and I wasn't finding passion in life. So walked away from my job on a Friday, waited for the cycle, and a coach, big-time coach, told me I turned him down for a GA spot at a Power 4, so he told me I had to serve penance. And I started at the D3 level, and a week into the job, Matt Campbell calls me and says, "Hey, I want you here." And then Dan Mullen brought me down to Mississippi State, and my college head coach. And just like you said, it's about people you know. But really, my passion comes from every day I was raised by coaches, and a lot of it I think can get lost in the money and the different things going on in college football. At the end of the day, our job's to provide opportunity to young men chasing a dream. And I think if I keep that in sight and I'm with the right people, a lot of things have worked out for me in life. So my commitment to it is to be as good or better as those guys who kind of did it for me.
I'm trying to envision those Nerf football games in your backyard as you were a kid growing up.
A lot of broken bones, bloody noses. I did actually get my ankle broken one time, and my dad told me to walk it off. I walked for about 2 days before I couldn't walk, and they're like, "Hey, we got to take you to get an x-ray." So, yeah, it was pretty physical.
Obviously, you were a pretty good high school player because you ended up playing at Bowling Green.
Yeah, I had a legendary high school head coach up in Cleveland by the name of Chuck Kyle. He works with Roger Goodell, different things now. We won about 11 state titles in 22 years and had a great run there. And it was just a great program raised by a lot of great guys who knew me from growing up. So they knew my story and knew how to correct me and be that, really build that brotherhood as opposed to friendship.
What was it about Bowling Green? I'm sure you were recruited by numerous schools. What was it about Bowling Green that you finally signed on the dotted line and said, I'm going to be a Bowling Green Falcon?
So my second oldest brother played there, and in the recruiting process, there was a lot going on from Big Ten schools, different things calling me, Iowa, different things being up north, and I went on a visit with Joe Schaefer, who's now the D-line coach at UConn, was my college roommate. But at the end of the day, I never forgot when my dad passed away, my brother was playing at Bowling Green, and the whole team got on the bus and came down for the wake. And that was DJ Durkin and all these guys who were legends of the game, essentially. They're not legends, but big-time names out there now. We're all at that wake, and that was family to me. And that was something you couldn't put on a T-shirt, and they showed it. And so when I was getting recruited, a lot of schools would be like, hey, we're offering you Toledo, different schools, MAC schools, but they're like, you're going to Bowling Green. I say, yeah, it's done.
Seems like, anybody who plays in the Rust Belt, anybody who's from the Rust Belt comes out with a little bit different mentality. And I'm talking, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, those middle states right there. Seems like there's a little bit of a different mentality if you're from there and you play football, really at any level.
Yeah, there's, that work ethic, the different things. And, I can just speak for myself. I mean, my brothers really instilled that in me, that toughness, those different things, being the youngest. And, there's a want to in those things, but, you're going to play in every weather. Like, guys, things you can't control. I can't control the weather. We got work to do. We got a game to play in, right? We don't get all this sunshine, all that stuff. So there's a mentality to it. And then just, I knew where I was coming from. I knew what I was, and I knew I was never going to be outworked. So,
looking back at your career, it seems like there are obviously different levels that have brought you to where you are and kind of, set your what's the word I'm trying to think of? Set you on your direction. Yeah. Playing in those Nerf games behind your house with your brothers, but being a 3-year starter at Bowling Green, being a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to be a team captain. And, I think the biggest thing as a leader is being able to shut your mouth and listen to guys and different things. And for me, that, trajectory was all – at the end of the day, is like I said, it all comes down to people. And as a leader, you got to be surrounded by the right people. Not everybody can lead. And for me, in my role, I'm decided as a leader by the head coach in that sense, but he's also leading the team. So my job isn't just to be out there as a solo voice, is to emphasize the head coach's his vision and those things. And, I was set up on a good path and got to work play for and work for a bunch of different guys to see, it done differently and see those things and learn.
Foundation was the word that I was looking for. Yeah. You've got a foundation built at a number of different levels, going all the way back to those Nerf games, to being a 3-year starter and a leader at Bowling Green, to learning from the guys that you've learned from as you have climbed the coaching ladder to the point you are today.
Yeah, and, the biggest thing to me is where I'm at today. I think, some guys, look at different things. Like there was opportunities where I would have been at a Power 4 school or different things, and I was working D3 football. I worked D2 football, FCS, group of 6, Power 4. And to me, I got to learn everything. And, I think one of the things that gets lost on a lot of guys, I'll pick up bags. I'll do whatever it is. I'll take the trash out. Getting to experience that where you had to wear many different hats allowed you to be more of a servant, too, like you spoke about as a leader. You got to be willing to serve, to lead. And, working those different levels, learning how young men learn and, different backgrounds and different things has been a gift in my career.
Talking about climbing the ladder, 2016, 2017, you mentioned you're at Mississippi State. I think was that when you were there with Dan Mullen?
In 2014.
And 2014. And then you jump ahead 2018 to 2021. You're the D-line coach at Western Illinois. So you can kind of see your progression up the coaching ladder to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the experience is going from a P4 school and having a lot of resources and the recruiting and the different things and going to that other level. I remember getting in the car, guys talk about recruiting. I would drive 8 hours down to Memphis, and I'd drive around for 2 weeks and do everything and all that stuff. And it's been a great learning curve for me. One thing Dan Mullen always talked about, don't just sit there, be an analyst. He would come in, he's like, hey, I'm paying you, but at the same time, go get recruiting experience. Go get that experience for yourself. So when an opportunity came, I think, I made the most educated decision I had in those moments. And to me, there's no regrets in that. I look back and I had a great experience there and going to Youngstown State and all the different spots I've had.
Talking to John Haneline, one of the DCs here on the staff of Del McGee, first season. When you're out recruiting, are you looking for a John Haneline type kid?
Yeah, they say they have the traits and stuff, and it gets a little more difficult nowadays because, when we were growing up in the recruiting and stuff, we were on VHS tapes and, landlines and calling cards when I went to college, right? So a lot of guys want to text. Even my old GAs, one of them's a corners coach at Vandy. He knows if he texts me, he better have 10 minutes carved out because I'm not going to sit there and text him. I'm going to call him. But it is a different type of time. But looking for me, no, I want kids to be themselves in that sense, and I want them to be who they're going to be, and I want to find ways that I can help them emphasize that.
So now you're here at Georgia State, as I mentioned in the open, previous 4 seasons at Youngstown State, 3 of them as an assistant to the head coach, Doug Phillips. Talk about your 4 seasons there and how that prepared you to take the next step, which was coming to Atlanta.
Yes, absolutely. For me, being there, Coach Phillips is unbelievable to work for and learn from as a man, especially, teaching as a young man walks through the halls. You never know what a guy's going through. And, they're not always just going to share the story. So keeping open doors and having guys, the amount of different position groups who come through my room on a given day now and just chat and see how life is. He taught me a ton about being a leader in that way and being there for the young men because at the end of the day, life's going to hit a heck of a lot harder than football. So he taught me a ton there. And in trusting me, we had I got there. They had about 2 wins on the season before. We flipped it around, won 7 that year, and then come back, win 8. And our defensive coordinator that I was co-DC with, he had left, got to inherit. Well, the portal hit, right? Some things happen. You lose a bunch of guys, come back, and we had a bad season, 4 wins, and we're able to get back last season. And a lot of that learning process comes from being around the guys and learning how to listen, how to do those things. But learned a ton about leadership from him and being there in a different form as opposed to the old linebacker days of me being the aggressive guy, all those things, and knowing how to manage the staff and do those things. So Youngstown State prepared me incredibly. And through that time, I had different schools calling me. I had different things every single season. I had calls from FBS school, different things about opportunities. And to me, it was still about coming down to people, and that opportunity with Coach Clark was one I couldn't pass up.
So tell me how this is going to work from your standpoint. You are co-defensive coordinator with Coach Clark. How is that going to work, and how is that going to break down?
Yeah, so we got to work together before in developing kind of the defense and different things. So at the end of the day, a lot of the front 6 things, the linebackers, the D-line, like this morning we met, and I'm going to run that unit install, and we're going to get those things clear, concise. I think the biggest thing we can have, there's a lot of clinic talk and things out there nowadays is getting a clear and concise message to the kids so they can play fast. So when it comes to it all being on the same page, I'm going to lead the front 6 aspect, and he's going to lead those corners and safeties and that back 5. So in that, we really play well off each other, and it's constant communication. For me and him, my wife are good friends. His daughter's got pictures drawn up in my office already, right? We're like family already, so there's never a day really we go where we're not talking and communicating already and having the same vision. I already, share it as a culture aspect with them and continuing to build the defense around what we have with our players.
What was your impression of Georgia State football prior to taking the job? How much had you taken a closer look at the program? The program is still very, very, overall, it's still very young. It's played 16 seasons.
Yeah, and, to a point, it was interesting in hearing hearing the story of Coach McGee take over the job, kind of a shortened spring, different things, because that was how Coach Phillips took over. He got COVID, cut it off, right? Not to get to know the guys and those things, and staff turnover, different things. To be honest, I only saw one game last year. I think it was a Thursday or Friday night. I was watching South Alabama game, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, every year is a new roster, new people, new things. And to me, I didn't dive as much into the film until after I took the job to find out what our guys can do, where they're comfortable, different things like that, as opposed to, I got to get on the phone with Coach Clark. I knew it from the jump with him, but then getting to talk to Coach McGee, I think I was in a rental car in Austria when I was on the phone with him, 6-hour time difference, and we got to talk for 30, 40 minutes, and, it just fired me up. So at the end of the day, it wasn't going to come down to film to me taking a job or moving on because I was comfortable. We had a great team. We had FCS Heisman winning quarterback up there, an All-American rush end, all these things. But the people here was something that I came running to.
All right, Coach, appreciate it. Appreciate you joining us. Welcome to Georgia State. Continued success, and we're looking forward to getting this 17th season of Georgia State football underway with you on the sideline.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Go Panthers.
All right, that'll wrap up our podcast featuring our defensive coordinators. Want to thank Cam Clark and John Haneline for joining us here for a few minutes on each of our segments as we dive deep into Georgia State football. A few new faces on the staff this year. A quick reminder, tickets available online at georgiastatesports.com. You can also call the Georgia State Athletics ticket office at 404-413-4020. Don't forget, season tickets available, and we look forward to the season opener September the 4th against North Carolina A&T here at Center Park Credit Union Stadium. A quick reminder to Panther fans, we're back talking Georgia State athletics again soon right here on the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. So for coaches Clark and Haneline, Dave Cohen saying thanks for listening. We'll see you at Center Park Credit Union Stadium, the GSU Convocation Center, or the ballpark at Panthersville. And as always, go Panthers!